Real quick, before we start this podcast episode, I just want to say thank you for tuning into the Marc Colcer podcast. I know you've got a million things that you could be doing right now, and the fact that you're taking time out of your day to watch this podcast episode truly means the world to me, and I just want to say thank you for that. If you'd like to continue to support the podcast, right below this video, if you could hit the subscribe button, and then, hey, if you got some more time and you want to hit the download button, the comment button, the like button, the share button, any of those buttons, it's greatly, greatly appreciated. It helps for other people to find out about the podcast, and it helps for you to be notified about future episodes. So if you guys could take a quick second, hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. Outside of that, this episode and every other episode is brought to you guys by Roast Umber Coffee. As some of you guys know, I co-founded Roast Umber Coffee, and we have the greatest farmers in Guatemala and Honduras and the greatest roaster in Grand Rapids, Michigan, all to bring you guys the greatest cup of coffee possible. So if you'd like to try it out, go to our website, use the coupon code MARC30, and you're going to get 30% off your coffee. Now on to the episode. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Welcome to the Marc Colcer Podcast. So, third time's the charm. We have, for everybody else, we have recorded this podcast 3 times. Reason being is the first time we recorded this, right after we got done recording, there was the big announcement that that you guys acquired the IP from HadesDAO, right?
Yep.
And then we recorded a second time, and that day we were just off. Both of it, we could have done better,
Listen,
you know?
It was meme coin season. We were distracted.
Yeah, we were talking about, all kinds of different meme coins and
Pepe,
shit like
guac.
that. There was a mint on Sui that we were chatting about. There was a lot going on.
Fuddy's Day, yeah.
You know, and I called you the other day and I said, hey, we could drop that podcast or we could just do better.
Right.
And when we knew we could do better, so we recorded it for a third time. So third time's the charm. So
Yeah.
Ricky, for people who don't know who you are, can you give a brief intro to yourself?
Yeah. So I am Marc Colcer's next door neighbor. I live a block away.
There we go.
That's the most important thing you need to know. But beyond that, I am, in real life, I'm an attorney. I work for a law firm doing a lot of Web3 crypto-related litigation. And in Web3, I go by Ricky. I am a member of the MonkeyDAO SMB Gen 3 team and a former 2-term member of the MonkeyDAO board, where I handled all the partnerships and minting and new projects and stuff for the DAO.
So before we get into all of this, I want to talk about a little bit more of your background. So what were you doing before getting into NFTs and crypto and all that kind of good stuff?
Right. So as I mentioned, I am a lawyer. So I was kind of in between jobs at the time. I was about to transition to a new job. I was working at this big law firm, so I had a little bit of expendable income, and I thought, maybe I can look into some ways to invest this. But traditional stocks were always way beyond me. I just didn't really understand getting into fundamentals of that stuff. But something that was always kind of very intuitive to me was collecting. So I collected all kinds of shit growing up: Pokemon cards, enamel pins, yo-yos, keyboards. I would just get really invested in these little niche communities. And so I was listening to this podcast. This guy. What's his name? I just forgot his name. Anyway, he's the founder of Moonbirds, Proof Collective.
Oh, Kevin Rose.
Kevin Rose, thank you very much. He's got this podcast called Modern Finance, or he did, that ended up just being all about NFTs. He talked about his CryptoPunks and his art blocks and his stuff, and it was just instantly intuitive to me. It was yeah, it makes perfect sense. There are these little pieces of artwork that you can collect, and then you join a community, and there's this buying and trading that goes on that's just so familiar to all of these things that I loved growing up. I think a lot of people feel this way about sneakers and baseball cards and stuff. So I tried to jump into that, and the first place I went was art blocks, because that's where everybody said all these beautiful generative art pieces were being sold. And they had some amazing pieces at the time, some things like Fidenzas that now are worth a fortune. And so I thought, wow, I could definitely get into this. Some of these pieces really speak to me. But then I saw what the mint prices were and it was just astronomically high. And I had never dealt with gas before, so I didn't know how any of that stuff worked. And so I tried to mint, and nothing was going through, of course, because the gas wars were happening. And so I had to learn on the fly, and of course got nothing out of that. And I was this sucks. This is a terrible experience. There's got to be something better. I'm clearly late to this trend. It turns out I wasn't, but at the time it felt I have to learn so much to be able to access this ecosystem. It's just not worth it to me. So I went back and kept listening to this podcast. And one thing about Kevin Rose is he was a real early investor in Solana. He would talk about Solana quite a lot. And so I was okay, so maybe that's the next big thing. Maybe I can be early somewhere else. And so I hopped in, or I think I just Googled Solana NFTs. And the very first thing that popped up was this thing called Solarians. which maybe some people remember from like early June, July of 2021. There were these like cute animated pixel robots. Actually weren't that cute. They were kind of ugly, but I liked them because I liked robots. They felt nostalgic to me. And I think I paid like 15 Sol when Sol was like at $30 for one of these. They minted on a bonding curve. It was like a really slow minting process. And it actually had a really cool mint site. Like it was like animated and like it popped out a little robot for you. And it felt like a ceremony almost. And I thought this is so cool. I'm so about this. So that's how I got into it.
And then from there, I guess what made you bullish on NFTs at the time? Because I get obviously being like somebody who's into collectibles and things like that. So was I, right? But yeah. I don't think at the time NFTs really, like, I didn't really get it at the beginning. Like did you see it before you even like bought your first NFT? Did you see the value in them, or was it something that you kind of like realized how like awesome it was once you got into the space? Because that's kind of how it was for me. I was kind of like, I think this is kind of stupid. And then my buddy was like, just mint one and see if you have fun with it. And then like once I did, I was like, okay, now I'm sold on it.
Yeah.
But what I guess sold you on NFTs?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. So I was like a bit of both because like to me, it really was intuitive that you could like collect these things. But like I wasn't convinced that everybody else thought the same way. I was convinced that everybody else was like trying to pump a Ponzi, right? Like they were just like, oh yeah, community, like Wagbo or WagMe, let's go. But once I actually jumped into the communities and like saw people, the way that people talked about, like at the time it was Solarians and later it would be SMBs and then a million other projects after that, like the way people talked about like these traits and would spend a lot of money that felt almost irrational. If you think about it in like pure economic terms, it would feel irrational to spend all this money on like getting a Solana skin, an SMB, for example. But like that actually resonated with me. Like that spending that kind of money for the flex, I think is a very human intuition. It's a very human like instinct to want to buy something that kind of shows your status or shows like that you have taste, that you have, that you have some influence or whatever, right? Like once I kind of realized this ties into a much broader human tradition of collecting things, of flexing things, of owning things just to own them, so that you can talk about them and show them off. Then I realized, oh, this really does have legs. Like this isn't just a Ponzi. This is not a bubble or a trend. We've been doing this as human beings since we were able to like collect shells off the beach and show them to our friends and have them be impressed by them. So it feels like it's just a part of that tradition.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah. So you got into Solana NFTs in that like June, July 2021, and then shortly after that was the SMB original mint in August 2021, right?
Yeah, well, I think actually I minted like the Solarian maybe in August, like the first week of August, and it was that day I jumped into the Discord. And I love telling this story because like everybody knows Jemmy Jem now. He's like one of the founders of the MonkeyDAO. He's the founder of Monkey Ventures. Just like all around great guy. He wears this Solana for SMB with a sombrero. He's iconic now. But at the time, like he was a big Solarians max. He owned like 60 of these things. And I didn't know, but he like reached out to me in my DMs in Discord. I had like 3 total Discord servers at the time. And like the one thing I knew about Web3 at the time is you do not like transact with people who pop up in your Discord DMs, because that's a surefire way to get rugged. But he was like, hey, let me know if you want to trade. Like you can see my collection. Come see my collection. It looks so good. And we can maybe work out a deal. And I was like, I don't know about this. So I went into the Discord just to like background check this guy and flipped through his messages. And like one of his most recent messages was like, hey, is anybody else minting this Pixel Monkeys project in a couple hours? So I like kind of looked into that. I went to like it's like SolanaMonkeyBusiness.com or something stupid. And like the mint was like counting down. So I was like, okay, I'll check this out. Like I have a couple of Sol left. And that's how I minted SMB.
I always love the random stories of how we found out about projects back then, because now it's like when a project mints in 2023, it's like, it's pretty easy to find out what are the hype mints. Like it's easy to figure out where to go to find those.
Right.
Back then, it was like you had to hear about it from somebody because it was always on some random-ass website. This is before launch pads and stuff like that. You also hope that you didn't just get your wallet drained the moment you went to mint it. Like you were connecting to all these different random-ass sites, right? And like I remember the practice of like you'd be on Phantom and you would connect to a random site to mint something, and then immediately you'd go into trusted apps afterwards and revoke access because you were worried that you were just going to get drained afterwards. Yeah. It was a wild, wild time.
In the early days, that was back when Phantom, you could turn on auto approve.
Yeah.
And just like 0 checks before you spend money. Just like click, 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 click as fast as you can. And that was the only way you could mint back then. No whitelist, just open up as many tabs as possible. But yeah, actually, now that you mentioned it, that was kind of the founding of MonkeyDAO, because like there were all these mints that were going on. The Solana ecosystem was like lit ablaze in August or in September, but like people had no way of finding out about these mints. I completely missed DAA. I completely missed Orrery. And so like, I think a lot of the people kind of felt the same about different mints and decided to form this community where we were all kind of like pulling in the same direction, helping each other out. So the like very first channel in the Discord for MonkeyDAO was this channel called DGen Mints, which is still like the most popular channel in there. It was just people like, hey, this thing is minting, check this out, sharing in many cases wallet trainers in this chat, but in other cases, you know, really good mints that people would get into. I remember like Solsteads was shared in there, and that was like a quick 100x. It was crazy. I mean, that was really part of the impetus for founding MonkeyDAO.
And that was the first project I tried to mint, which was Solsteads.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Did you hit?
No, but 2 of my buddies did, and then they made a bag in like 2 days, and so I was sold on NFTs at that point, because I was like, I don't know why people are buying these things, but they're buying them, and so I was like, I'm sold, and got into NFTs after that, and really got excited by it. But so I feel like back then when you were minting projects, we were all minting them and just kind of hoping they randomly went up in value, right? Like there wasn't really you weren't like, the term roadmap was like sort of kind of used back then, but also at the same time, like NFTs were so new that nobody really knew what to expect, right? Like, were they supposed to have this game plan of like what to do with the project afterwards and stuff like that? So after you minted the monkeys, how quickly, I guess, did you figure out that, hey, this dev team isn't really looking to like keep building with this, and it was just kind of something where they created the art, they put it out, and like they didn't really have long-term plans? I guess, when did you guys start to realize that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. It's like, it was even early days for like Ethereum projects. So like when we were, you know, when the people in the MonkeyDAO, in the SMB community, there was no MonkeyDAO yet, we're like thinking, where does this go? Like there wasn't a prototype, right? Like you could look to CryptoPunks, maybe, you could look to Bored Ape, like maybe, but like there were so few examples that there wasn't like a meta formed. So it's exactly like you were saying, the SMB team didn't have any roadmap. There wasn't really an expectation that they would. The one thing that they did do was at least, you know, they at least paid lip service to this idea that they were going to set aside some portion of the royalties for a community fund. So a few of the more like engaged members of the community who are now, I mean, just household names in Solana, it's Jemmy Gem, who I mentioned, a guy called Arpy, Solana Legend, OX Ceylon, and the one and only Nam, right, decided, well, why don't we take advantage of that and form a real community? And, you know, one of the very early trends at the time, a word that got thrown around that people actually really didn't know much about, was the word DAO, like a decentralized autonomous organization. So we thought, well, let's form a DAO. We'll call it the MonkeyDAO. And we don't really know what we'll do with it yet, but we like this idea of having a decentralized organization where holders can make decisions on what to do with this community fund that we were expecting to have. And there was no, you know, Discord gating services, no Matrica, no Grape, no nothing like that. So these 5 of them were just DMing people saying, hey, join this Discord. We will verify that you have a monkey in your wallet. Or in my case, it was Jemmy saying, hey, I know you happen to mint this because we were in the Discord at the same time, so come join. And then it just blossomed in this beautiful, amazing community. We formed a governance structure. We formed, you know, services for all the monkeys, started having IRL events. And we did that before we ever even got access to any of that community fund that I mentioned.
Why do you think it was the MonkeyDAO project, or the SMB project, that you guys decided to formulate this MonkeyDAO for? Because do you think it was mainly just timing of like there weren't a ton of Solana projects out at the time, and so it was kind of one of these things where because you guys had heard that they were putting some money aside for the community, you were like, hey, let's create this MonkeyDAO? Or do you think, like, I guess because the part that I've always wondered is back then there were a lot of projects that they would mint, and then the, you know, devs or whatever would kind of be talking in Discord, and you kind of get the vibe that, hey, we're not planning on doing much, right? Yet you never really saw these like crazy powerful DAOs be created, right? But yet there was this crazy powerful DAO created for MonkeyDAO.
Right.
Do you think that was just because of the fact that it was so early in the space, or like why do you think that it was created for that project?
No, I think there's like so many different reasons. I think different people are going to have different reasons. But like, yeah, we weren't the first project on Solana. Like there was this project Creatures they were kind of ugly, right? It wasn't really generative. They weren't PFPs. And then there was Solarians. Again, they weren't PFPs. So like the monkeys came out and they were sort of this instantly recognizable pixel art thing. They make for great PFPs. Almost doesn't matter how small you shrink them down. They're still like really readable as a monkey. They've got that like great like nostalgic feel and that like very charming smile that just makes you like they're approachable. You want to be represented by this character in Web3, I think. So that I think resonated with people. And you know, the obvious comparison that everybody was making at the time was like, these are the punks of Solana, right? We're talking about generative pixel art PFPs on a new blockchain. You almost hear this all the time. So it was that idea, wow, like this project was early. This project is what everybody wants to use as their PFP. And, you know, generative pixel art always has legs. This is the community that I want to be a part of. And so I think a lot of people felt the same way, maybe for different reasons, but they kind of came together, and then that momentum just kept going. I mean, it created this flywheel that just, I mean, it collected all of the people who came to Solana early because they recognized like the promise of the blockchain and wanted to start something of their own. And because you had all of those like, you know, movers and shakers and builders in one place, it became an unstoppable force.
I feel like most people that I know that got into Solana NFTs got into it in like that October through like January. So end of 2021, beginning of 2022,
yeah,
right?
The good days. Those are the bull market days.
The real fun times.
Yeah.
So you mint something and either went to zero or went 50x in like an hour. But you know, I feel like that makes sense with SMB because you guys were August 2021, which meant you were really, really early, right?
Yeah.
And I think that means that like a lot of the people that minted SMB had to be people who were super forward thinking, right? Because if you got into Solana NFTs that early, you had to be one of the people that was like, hey, I'm forward thinking. I'm thinking about what's next. Like I see what people are doing on Ethereum, but like what's the next thing? Okay, Solana. And I think that you take all those people that are super forward thinking, you put them into this, you know, group of people, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, let's create this DAO. We got this decentralized autonomous organization. Really at a time that people weren't even using DAO yet. Like that wasn't like a common term yet, right?
No,
especially not on Solana.
Yeah.
So I feel like in a lot of ways, you guys were just super forward thinking, and you take all those people together, you create this really marketable art, and then you say, hey, we've got this marketable art, we've got all these you know, really smart people who are really forward thinking. And then we know that we're supposed to get these you know, a portion of mint funds for kind of a community fund. Okay, boom, let's create this MonkeyDAO, and it becomes this powerful thing. And so early days, what were you guys doing? When did you start becoming like active in MonkeyDAO? And I guess like what were the early days like? Were you guys actually doing things? Like when did you start doing events and stuff like that?
Yeah. So you know, again, it was like, what are we supposed to look to for a prototype here? And there wasn't much at the time, so we were just kind of, you know, I think that everybody in the community was just kind of thinking, how can I bring value to this group of friends, right, that I actually really like. And people come to Web3 from all kinds of different places. People come from a legal background like me. You know, events planning and management was another major one we had. Investments is one we had from Jemmy. You know, people were coming from a marketing standpoint, all these different angles, and everybody wanted to contribute, you know, their efforts. And that's one of the great, wonderful things about a DAO is that you pay this price of entry, and then it's like, you know, you're staking the money that you paid for your NFT and hoping that value increases. So anything that you can do as a member of this decentralized organization to increase the value of everybody's NFTs is also good for you. And that's what people were doing in the early days. It was the only place to do it. So we'd have, you know, devs, lawyers, artists, marketers, you know, investment people coming in and thinking, how can I contribute? And so you saw people like Jemmy making, you know, Monkey Ventures, which has gone on to fund, you know, phenomenal initiatives throughout the ecosystem. You had people like MacD who were like, well, I travel all over the world and have experience planning events, and just through these like blowout events with like phenomenal videos after the fact showing all these monkeys having a great time. And you had people like Super Simon come in who were just like really excellent like community managers, bringing people together and like, you know, to settling disputes and keeping everybody happy and engaged in the Discord. And all of these, you know, all of these skills you weren't really finding other places at the time, because it was, you know, this was the place to be, and that attracted more people. I mean, it's that flywheel I keep referring to. So yeah, I think that's part of what it was. I mean, from my perspective, it's like, I remember when I first met with a guy called Sai, who is, this like Harvard trained securities lawyer who is in the MonkeyDAO and has a ton of experience, with all kinds of legal issues, but specifically with types of legal issues that we might face as a DAO one day, and was able to contribute his experience. This is kind of dry stuff, but this is like the stuff I find interesting. Like, he was able to contribute his experience on how we could like incorporate ourselves, like form a legal wrapper for the DAO so that we could become a real, like, recognizable legal entity that can contract with people, open a bank account, that can, form engagements with the outside world at a time when no one was thinking about that kind of thing, like super advanced, level of professionalism for effectively an NFT project.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool to see how many just brilliant people all got involved with MonkeyDAO right from the beginning. And I remember when I got into Solana NFTs and hearing about MonkeyDAO, and then just every time I felt like I went on Twitter and like saw somebody, with some super smart take, they were rocking a monkey PFP, and I was like, all right, I'm figuring this out. Like, these people are fucking smart. These people know their stuff. So it was, I remember right away just kind of following a bunch of people who had the monkey PFPs and just feeling like, hey, if they're tweeting something, they probably know something, and I should probably learn from these sort of people. So
yeah. There are a few examples. You and I can probably think of a couple, but yeah, for the most part, like early days, like you think of your soul big brains, and it's just these are iconic, and you start to form those connections. Like smart take, monkey PFP, that's exactly what we were doing a lot. And we still, I think we still do that a lot today, but that is like the ethos of monkey business.
100%. So as time went on, then we get into 2022. When exactly did you guys start to kind of formulate the idea of like, hey, these devs aren't really doing anything. They're not really trying to continue to build out the project. We're doing far more at the time than they are. And so we want to acquire the IP. When, I guess, did that sort of conversation start to occur?
Yeah. So, it's kind of something that made a lot of sense, like as soon as we formed the DAO, because I think there's real evidence that, if you look at when like SMB floor prices first like went stratospheric, it was around the time that we formed the DAO. Like when it became clear that doesn't matter what the devs are going to do, because now there's this rock stable community that is going to continue to buy and hold these things, therefore supporting the price of them. Like, then the market went crazy. The market decided this is a good investment, because now I know that this isn't going to rug, and if it does, like, there's still a reason to buy these things, and it's to join this thriving community. So we saw the value of SMBs go up. We realized that meant that royalties were being paid out a lot, but they weren't being paid to the members of the MonkeyDAO. They weren't being paid to the people who were running this day-to-day organization. And the SMB team had all kinds of reasons for why they didn't want to, give us that portion of the community fund. But, ultimately they weren't giving it to us. And so we had to go back to the table and negotiate with them. That's when the word entanglement first started coming up. And I think it was like around June or something of 2021, where we realized these devs are not going to support the community in the way that we feel we need it to be supported. And we're doing all of this work. We're not getting the benefit of that work. And it's becoming unsustainable. Like, really bright people were leaving the community because like they just didn't have the time to commit like the hours and hours to helping out the MonkeyDAO. Like myself, I had a full-time job, and I was spending like an additional 40 hours a week just working on MonkeyDAO stuff. And I was getting so burned out, but I had to keep working at my regular job to like pay my bills and shit. So we recognized that was a problem. And the simplest solution was to own the project, because then every SMB that gets sold, portion of that would go to supporting our efforts, to paying for these IRL events, to paying for the people who are putting in hours and hours into the community. So we started negotiating with them around that time, and they were taking a lot of heat from the community for having not basically sat on their hands and collected royalties for the better part of 8 months. And it was around NFT NYC 2022 where we announced that we had reached an agreement in principle for them to sell us the project for this exorbitant amount of money. But at the time, we felt like that was the only way to do it. And that was more than a year ago that we finally like announced our plans to do so, and that the SMB team had agreed to sell it to us. But then, we just struggled to raise that money over the course of a year, and things just kind of like petered out for a while.
So at the time, there were two main ideas, right? One idea was to actually buy the IP from the original devs.
Yeah.
The other idea was the entanglement, which you mentioned a second ago. Can you explain for somebody who doesn't know, what does entanglement mean, and why, I guess, was that not a viable solution?
Yeah, I can. So now Nam's going to kill me for bringing up entanglement. So before I go into any of this, like, this is all off the table now. Like, now we don't even have to think about this horrible idea. But the thought was, so the first time this came up was when we were talking about royalties. We wanted royalties, right? We felt like we had earned a portion of that pie because we were doing all the effort to like market these SMBs, and the development team refused to give them to us, unless we did a million different things that we didn't want to do. So we thought, well, what if we just issue everybody in the DAO a replacement NFT that looks exactly the same as the SMB that they've come to use. Like for me, I always use the green beret with the green glasses, the green what is that, suit, and so I would get one that looks exactly like this. I would get to continue using it as my PFP, obviously, because that's just a JPEG. But then that NFT would give me access to MonkeyDAO, and that would be the only thing that gives me access to MonkeyDAO. And if I sell that NFT, it gets paid. The royalties get paid to the DAO instead of the SMB team. That is effectively all entanglement is. So I would lock up my SMB in a smart contract and receive an identical looking NFT that gives me access to MonkeyDAO and pays royalties to the DAO. And so that idea was like the nuclear option. We didn't want to have to do that because it would have been a lot of work, and you probably wouldn't get that much from royalties because not everybody is going to swap their SMBs over, and you'd ultimately like split the collection. It would be super confusing. Like imagine that going on Magic Eden and seeing SMBs and MonkeyDAO monkeys that look identical, right? So we really didn't want to have to do that, but it brought the SMB team back to the negotiating table, right? Because they didn't want to see us cut into their royalties that way. And so that's the first time it came up. The second time it came up was like nearly a year later, when we still haven't managed to raise the money to purchase the SMB IP. We're really running low on funds at this point. And like we've got plans that we want to use to generate revenue long term, but they all kind of require us to own the IP, to have the update authority, to be able to raise money into the future. And so one thought was, well, why don't we look again at this entanglement option and make our own NFTs that MonkeyDAO itself issues, the access tool for the MonkeyDAO. So that way, all of the wonderful benefits that people have come to expect from the MonkeyDAO are actually funded by the sale of those NFTs.
Okay, so if I have it correctly, so basically you guys are debating the two ideas, the entanglement or purchasing the IP. In right around June 2022, you guys actually come up with a purchase price for the IP from the original devs, but then you guys had to go and raise that money, right?
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, you guys weren't at the time able to actually raise that money.
I mean, it was like right after NFT NYC, like the market just
took
tanked.
a shit. Yeah,
it was terrible.
Yeah,
I mean, like we were talking to like big name partners that like everybody's kind of heard of, because they have like affiliations with a lot of the big projects like DeGods in the ecosystem. And we just, they had all kinds of issues because of like Three Arrows Capital going under, and way too many other things happened in the market to like go through it now, but like everything just fell apart.
Yeah. So, okay. So then we get through the rest of 2022, which was a wild time in the NFT space. It felt like every other day there was something crazy happening.
Yes.
And so you guys were trying to raise funds at the same time. There wasn't really, it felt like the entire 2022 was this battle of is SMB going to acquire the IP from the original devs? What's going to happen? And so and so we wrote down dates, so we just made sure we got it right. So February 13th of this year, it's announced that HadesDAO, HD and HadesDAO acquired the actual SMB IP. Yeah. Was that something that you guys expected at the time? Where were you guys in the negotiation aspect of things? Because obviously, like I'm sure, if I'm playing devil's advocate here, I'm sure if I'm the original devs and I'm like, okay, I gave you guys an approval price for the IP and you guys are gonna buy it, and okay, we're waiting for you guys to actually get that money, right? Yeah. And they're probably sitting there being like, hey, we want this process to speed up because we want our money, right? Yeah. And so as you guys are going through that process, it's taken its sweet time because the NFT space, the crypto market's not doing too well. And so HG comes in the early part of 2023 and says, hey, I've got the money. I'm going to acquire the IP. I'm going to essentially give it to the HadesDAO to manage it. Yeah. And so were you guys weren't expecting it? I guess give me the background of what it was like for you guys at that time.
Yeah, so it's something like that. But let me say before I get into this, like I wasn't on the negotiating team. That was Nam and maybe some other monkeys. Like I heard about all this stuff like as part of the inside team, but like now I'm not on the board anymore. So like I can speak a little bit more candidly about it, but I still have to be a little bit careful. So basically, like there were so many times where we would get like this close, right? Like we would lock up we would get like an initial commitment to fund the purchase from some big investor. And then like some influencer would show up in the DAO and just throw a hand grenade and then everything would fall apart, or something else, some other like institution Web3 would go under and like, we can't fund you anymore. Or like FTX would crash. Like the weeks before FTX crashed, we were so close to a completely different deal. And so it kind of felt like it wasn't expected that HG would do this. But like when I heard, I remember it was like a weekend, I get a call from the team, like, SMB got acquired. I'm like, oh, that's great. And they're like, no, we didn't do it. And I was like, oh, okay. But like, it wasn't unexpected. It was like, fuck this again. Like same old story. And so what had been happening behind the scenes was, we'd agreed to this purchase price like a year ago. Obviously a year ago, the price of like an SMB was a lot more. The project was valued at a much higher price. So we had gone back to the SMB team and been like, look, we're obviously struggling to raise this money. Look at what the market is like. It's impossible right now. We got to renegotiate this price. They were open to renegotiating the price, and we'd managed to kind of get it down to a number that we thought was reasonable. So we knew what the last, like, I say we, but like the team knew what the last offer was, and they were putting together what's called a special purchase vehicle. SBB was leading it with a couple of other big names in the space that was going to buy the IP, buy the brand, and then, essentially sell it to the MonkeyDAO with a loan. And then HG swooped in, right? And I think it's exactly like you said. It's like these devs have been waiting around for their exit opportunity for nearly a year. They saw cash in hand and they thought, all right, I don't want to have to deal with like the heat from the community that I've been taking. Let's just take our payout and go. And I don't blame them for that. Like it's a fine, like it's just business, right? And I don't blame HG for it. Like I think I understand that he wanted to buy a community, so I don't blame them for it. But it was like it was such a punch to the gut.
Yeah, and so why? I guess when the acquisition went through, were you guys optimistic at all? Because I do know one thing.
Yeah.
When there's anything that's going on with SMB or MonkeyDAO or whatever, you go onto Twitter and there's a lot of different takes, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of really, really smart people in the MonkeyDAO, in the whole MonkeyDAO community.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people who seem to be okay with the HadesDAO purchase at first.
Right.
There were some people who absolutely hated it, and there were very, very strong opinions all over Twitter.
Yeah.
And so from the internal aspect, what was it like? Were you guys excited to try to work with HG and HadesDAO? Because obviously he's different than the SMB devs, and so it was like, okay, we got this new person that we're going to be talking with. How's that exactly going to work when we're working with HadesDAO on this? Like, what was that like? So what was it? Were you guys optimistic at all that like, hey, maybe we'll just be able to work with them and we won't have to worry about acquiring them now? Or what was the thought process?
Yeah. So first, let me say, like, that's one part I love about the SMB communities. They're so fucking passionate and vocal. Like that's important. Like you don't get that if it's a community nobody cares about. On the inside, what was going on was like my first thought was shit, but then my second thought was actually maybe this is a good thing. Like the SMB team wasn't doing anything. At least Hades, like they've built some stuff. Like they've shipped products. Like there's a lot of capital there that they could be investing in this. And so I was like, well, I'm a little annoyed that they didn't tell us that they were going to do this. That they didn't even think to talk to the community until after the purchase had already happened. But like, I'm willing to put that pettiness aside to see if we can work with this team. And they at least paid lip service to the idea that they were going to work with the MonkeyDAO, because recognizing that the MonkeyDAO was the community. But then they didn't, right? They really did not, want to take our advice on things. They were not interested in listening to what the MonkeyDAO leadership had to say. I was not in the leadership at the time. And, they were actually even hesitant to give us a seat at the table, right? Which, they'd given this SMB brand over to the HadesDAO, and then at least ostensibly, the idea was to let the HadesDAO govern the SMB, and to decide what happens with SMB, you have to be a voting member of HadesDAO, which is all so complicated to me. But they didn't even initially let the MonkeyDAO have a seat at the table, giving us enough tokens to be able to vote on things that happen to the NFT that we've built a community around. So I thought that was pretty problematic. I was vocal about it at the time, much to the chagrin of leadership of the MonkeyDAO. I think they'd prefer if I would have kept my mouth shut. But like it was an obnoxious time, and being not a member of the leadership, I felt like I could voice my opinion. And but I think eventually people started to realize the same, right? Which was that Hades didn't really have the best interests of the SMB project or the SMB community at heart. And some of the leadership of the SMB team at the time were doing things that I think most people agree were deleterious for the SMB brand overall. Things like, there was an ordinals mint that literally the community voted against. There were proposals to remint NFTs that had been burned, and they weren't really respecting this governance structure that they claimed to set up with the HadesDAO. So, the intuitive solution that everybody kind of landed on was that the SMB collection should be run by the SMB community, meaning the SMB brand should be owned by the SMB DAO. Like that unity of interests was the best solution. So we polled our community at the time, and we just asked them, like, what do you think we should do about this situation, in more words than that. But the community overwhelmingly voted. It was a poll, but overwhelmingly responded that we should spend the money. It's a lot of money, but we should spend the money to acquire the IP and finally put this issue to bed.
And so the original way that you guys were going to fund that now at that time was the OMC collection, right?
Yes.
And so you guys had formulated this idea of like, okay, whether we get the IP or not from the HadesDAO, we need to do something. We recognize we need to fund what we're doing, right? And so the OMC collection becomes the next step for MonkeyDAO, right? And so break down to me what was the original thought behind the OMC collection, which is now being called the Gen 3 collection, right?
I got to correct that. It's no longer the OMC collection, which is confusing. Doesn't tell you what it is, but SMB Gen 3, instantly you know what that is, because you know what SMB is, you know what Gen 2 is, presumably it's these guys. Gen 3 is the next generation.
Can we break that down real quick for people who don't know? So Gen 3 is the new collection that you guys are going to be minting in June. Right? And Gen 2 is what you're currently rocking. What was Gen 1?
Yeah. So this is important, and I'm glad that we got here. But SMB Gen 2 is the one everybody recognizes. SBB, buckets, iced, they all rock the Gen 2. And the Gen 2 is the generative one. It's the one that had all the traits, people don't even think about what generative means anymore, but that's the one that PFP, with all the different traits with different rarities that got thrown together. There was a Gen 1, and the Gen 1 was not generative. They were a series of, I think there were 5 or 6 of them, and each one were additions. And they looked really similar to Nintendo art. Like they looked just way too close to some Yoshi, Yukiki characters. And there was a Thanos one and a mechanic one and an alien one. And if you collected all of them, you would get a portion of the revenue from SMB Gen 2 sales, which was crazy and is not something that I ever would have advised if we were in control of the project at the time. The SMB dev team, before we acquired the IP, the SMB dev team stopped paying those out because they realized it was problematic. But that was technically the Gen 1. So there was that collection. Now they're, we get to decide what happens to those. But for the most part, the community wants them just to be like a memento, some sort of collector's item, but they don't have any utility. They don't even look very good.
Okay, fair. Because I was going to say, I don't feel like I ever hear anybody talk about the Gen 1.
Yeah.
So Gen 2 is what people are used to seeing on Twitter and everything like that.
Right.
And then Gen 3 is this new collection, right? Walk me through the process of, as you guys are formulating the idea of OMC, which is now called Gen 3, the original thought process was either A, to use the mint funds to actually purchase the IP from HadesDAO, or if you weren't able to acquire the IP, to actually have this be what? Explain that.
Right. So this is I think this is like a strategic masterstroke that I can't claim credit for. It was the executive team and a few of the members of the Gen 3 team that kind of put this together. But the proposal we gave to the DAO So everything that we do in MonkeyDAO, of course, goes through a proposal, because we like really take seriously the idea that we are decentralized and that we put power in the hands of our holders. So we put together this proposal that went to a vote, and the proposal was, we're gonna mint this collection, we're gonna mint it at these prices, we're gonna do that no matter what. Then we're gonna take those funds and we're gonna offer up to $2 million to the HadesDAO to purchase the SMB IP once and for all. We're going to give them 2 months to agree to terms that we write, and we're going to put it up as a proposal in the HadesDAO. And if they don't accept within 2 months, the deal's off the table. We're still going to mint the collection, and then we're just going to have this massive war chest to do our own thing and go our own way as the MonkeyDAO. So people refer to this as like this is like the contribution I made, is titling it the MonkeyDAO independence proposal, because it really was, we're either gonna shit or get off the pot. We're gonna buy the IP, or we're gonna say fuck it and make our own collection and go our own way and declare our independence. So the community loved that idea, voted for it overwhelmingly. The idea passed, and then Nam and some of the other members of the executive team put together the offer, right? This is the amount of money we'll give you. This is what we want, and sent it off to HadesDAO. And amazingly, it worked, right? So that was the thought process behind it. I can get into like how the deal actually got sealed later, but that's the idea.
Okay, so yeah, that was announced on April 20th that you guys had acquired the IP from HadesDAO, which was, I think, a few days after we had recorded our first podcast episode. And so we immediately kind of realized, hey, putting this out doesn't really make sense because it's not really a finished story. Like we're talking about things that don't really matter at this point. Now we know what's happening. You guys are acquiring the IP, right?
Right.
And so what does that look like? So is that currently being funded by Soul Big Brain?
Right. I gotta give a major shout out to Soul Big Brain, because he gave us like the bridge loan to actually make this deal happen. But yeah, so basically, here's my take on it, right? Like, again, not as a member of the negotiating team, so this part is just my own opinion. I think HGE realized you cannot buy an NFT community by buying out the underlying project. And so, he came in expecting to buy out SMB IP, and then for everybody in the MonkeyDAO to kind of rally behind him and herald him as like the savior. And when that didn't happen, I think, his expectations were he didn't get what he expected. So I think that he was open to trying to recoup his cost, right? As anyone would be. It's like rational decision to want to take your money back, and he, I think that's why he reached out to Nam and SBB and said, hey, is there some way we could make this deal? And it was after the vote had passed, so like the community was ready to spend that money if we could just get it, and SBB was willing to provide it in part. And so they, it was like backroom communications over the course of a weekend. And then I remember waking up on a Monday morning or whatever, and getting the message like, it's time to have a meeting. And it was the news I was looking for. It was like, finally, we're going to make this happen. And yes, so it did. So then there was this whole transition period that had to happen. Everything was above board. We have our own legal counsel, her name is Ariel Givner. She goes by Givy. She's a monkey. So shout out to her as well, who drafted up all the contracts. So everything is between an actual legal entity. We have a Delaware C Corp that is going to hold the assets and, holds each party to their obligations. It's super professional, as everything we do in the MonkeyDAO. And so SBB is going to front $1 million. We're going to pay that back through the initial batch of mints from the new Gen 3 collection. And then we'll also pay back the HadesDAO through that collection of funds. But we've already got control of the Update Authority, the royalties wallet, the Discord, the Twitter, and the branding. So it's all finally one unified front.
There we go. And that's exciting. It's exciting to know that this is something that I felt like was holding you guys back for a while. It was like it was that constant debate over and over and over again. And I know I wasn't even in the community, and I was exhausted about hearing about you guys acquiring the IP, because I was just like, it makes so much sense for you guys to acquire, but like,
Right.
damn it, can this finally happen?
Yes.
And then it did. So thank God it did. I'm very excited for you guys.
Yeah, me too.
But okay, so then talk about this Gen 3 collection.
Okay.
So what is the original now? So there's 5,000 of the original monkeys,
Yep.
right? And now there's going to be 15,000 of the Gen 3.
Yeah, we're
right?
doing 15K, and so we can go and talk about a lot of different ways. But the thing I love to talk about most about the Gen 3 collection is how like our artists just like killed it with this. With I don't know if you've seen the new ones, but
Yes,
just Friday we released like basically the newest version of like the base model, and we've made all these wonderful changes. But when we were designing this collection, like, so TWX, who is our designer, he goes by Tom, he's like he's a designer by trade, so which is kind of the person you want for this kind of job. Like, you get an artist to like make something look really cool, of course, but like for something that has to be designed within these like very tight constraints, you kind of want someone who's a designer and has worked in that kind of within those constraints before. So of course it had to have like pixel art. It had to be referential to this original collection. You had to be able to look at a new Gen 3 next to a Gen 2 and think these are a cohesive whole. Like there's an obvious through line from one to the other. Right. They had to kind of elevate that as well a little bit more. So one thing I've always complained about with the Gen 2 is like, if you show them to someone who doesn't already know that they're a monkey, there's some confusion there. Like, people have gotten used to them because we've seen them all over Twitter for 2 years now. So like everybody already knows, and it has this attachment to them. But this collection has to reach new people. This collection has to be instantly beloved by people who have never been in SMBs or Solana NFTs before. So there's that like point that it has to touch, right? So it's being close to the original without being too close to the original. And then it's got to like bring in some fresh new traits and stuff. Like a lot of the SMB Gen 2 traits are kind of borrowed from CryptoPunks. Like they're the familiar ones that everybody like associates with degeneracy online. But we wanted to kind of elevate that, bring in some more cultural references, some more, maybe gender specific traits. And I think we've really nailed that. So, the art I think is so cool. We recently brought on Zeno, who's like everybody's favorite pixel artist, and he's just taking it up to the next level. Truthfully, like early on when we showed the early art, there was a lot, just like everything in SMB and MonkeyDAO, there was a lot of Twitter conversation about it. Like people just had super strong feelings about the art because, of course, it's like, it's the face of Solana. People have these huge, really strong attachments to the Gen 2 art. And now with the new art that we just released on Friday, I haven't seen a single negative comment about it. Like people have really come around to it, and I see why. It's super cute, super adorable, super relatable.
There we go. So what kind of North Stars did you guys give the artists when they were working on this? Because is it something where, am I going to be able to tell the difference between a Gen 2 and Gen 3 when I'm looking at them on Twitter? And if so, how will I be able to tell the difference?
Yeah, I think that's important, right? Because one thing I always look for with like a collection is like you jump into a Twitter space, and if you just see like a field of those NFTs, and you can tell that they're all from the same collection, like you think, whoa, I need to like check this out on Tensor or Magic Eden, because like there's clearly a community here. Like people are really proud of using these as PFPs and identifying with them, and it's that like visual mass that gives you that sense. You get that with monkeys so much, right? So one thing we really didn't want to do, and you see this happen with a lot of collections that release a second gen, is we didn't want to fragment the visual feel of the collection, right? So, we wanted to, people love posting pictures of like the town hall where you just scroll and it's pictures of monkey after monkey and they look like an army of monkeys. That we wanted to retain while still making it look different, right? So it's maintaining that cohesive visual feel while still making it look different. So it's a wider grid, it's more resolution. They have more defined ears, which I think are really cute. But they've still got that cute wry smile. It's exactly the same pixel layout that you recognize from the SMB Gen 2s. Some of them will have tails, which is exciting. It's a defining feature of monkeys in nature, so it's good that they have tails.
So then, art aside from it, what is the main benefit for somebody buying the new Gen 3 collection? Because obviously, like the Gen 2 is still the main priority, right?
Yeah.
And then Gen 3, what am I getting access to if I happen to get one of the Gen 3?
Well, actually, let me cabin that. So I wouldn't say it's the main priority. The main priority is MonkeyDAO as a whole now, and it's so simple. Like MonkeyDAO is SMB. The main priority is just to elevate that community, to launch it. SMBs, of course, will be the premier collection. Those are the ones that are going to retain all governance rights over everything that happens in MonkeyDAO, which now means retaining governance rights over the SMB collections overall, which is actually important and is tangible, has value, a quantifiable value. SMB Gen 2s are the only collection that will have that. But everything else that the MonkeyDAO does, all of the wonderful services and events that people have come to expect from us, will be accessible to Gen 3 holders as well. So it's, a tremendous opportunity for people to get into the MonkeyDAO family who haven't been able to access like 180 SOL or 200 SOL floor price. We're going to do all the same things for the SMB Gen 2 holder or Gen 3 holders. And, people are worried that we're not going to be able to deliver on that. And I would be too. Like if someone else said this about their new NFT project, that we're going to have 15 to 20,000 NFTs and we're going to deliver the same benefits to all of those people, I would be super skeptical because they have no track record. But MonkeyDAO has that track record. We've been doing this for a community, a large community, for the better part of 2 years without any funding, right? And now we're about to come into this very, this very stable funding source over the next year or so, when we already have a team in place that is willing and has demonstrated that they know how to deliver value to the community. Now those people are going to have their incentives properly aligned with the sale of these NFTs, right? That's going to launch the collection. That's going to bring huge value to these new members who are joining the community. And I wouldn't say this about any other NFT collection, but truly the MonkeyDAO is probably the only one that I can think of that can actually deliver on value to a community of the size that we're planning.
100%. Yeah. Do you worry at all about it becoming oversaturated? Because that's always one of the main concerns I have when it comes to the NFT space. Is like we still only have so many people that are in the NFT space, right? Yeah. And so all of a sudden you're adding 15,000 to the collection, right? And so now you've got 20K people with these monkeys, right?
Yeah.
And you're hoping some of them are going to make their PFP now the Gen 3 collection, right? But there's also only so many people in the space, and a lot of people pledge allegiance to one PFP and therefore won't change it, right?
Yeah.
So do you worry at all about the oversaturation? And is there talk internally with the leadership of MonkeyDAO on how to get more and more people to get into NFTs, and that way, like we're marketing towards a larger spectrum of people versus the amount that we currently have?
Yeah, and this is an issue that we think about a lot, right? And it was a part of the reason that we took so long to get to this point is because we wanted to make sure that we could deliver on that promise. And I absolutely think that we can do that. For the one thing that you mentioned that I want to make sure I address is it's not going to be a 20,000 person community. Right now we have 5,000 NFTs in the Gen 2 collection, but the size of the community is only about 17 to 1,800. Goes up and down depending on the day. So we looked at that ratio. We estimate we're going to get about a similar ratio from the new community. And then we're implementing ways to gradually scale up the size. So yeah, at the end of the day, it'll be 20,000 NFTs with the ability to access MonkeyDAO at the end of the long process that we've laid out. And part of that process is going to be this auction system that we've talked about. So the last 5,000 NFTs are going to be auctioned over the course of a year using a completely custom brand new tech auction platform that we're working on with Metaplex right now. So actually that's a piece of news that I'm not sure has been released yet. So Metaplex, obviously one of the best ecosystem builders, perhaps the best ecosystem builder infrastructure layer that we have on Solana is we just formed this long-term deep partnership with them. They're going to be building all of our back-end tech on completely custom smart contracts, and we're going to be working with them, over the course of a year to do co-promotion, co-marketing, and making sure that this thing is a massive success. So that's the other piece of your question. Like, how do we reach a community of the size that we want? And I think that of all the collections left on Solana, we honestly, I think we can do it. You saw this happen with DeGods and Utes, right? Like, people question whether or not that organization could support a community of that size. But then what you saw is once those people hit Twitter and you had this massive army, you achieve just economies of scale. It's just this awesome synergy that happens on Twitter, where the larger your community is, the faster you're able to get traction, to get your voice out there, to grow the voice of your community, and thereby grow the size of your community. So we want to achieve the same thing, but with a commitment to Solana, right? We were the OG collection on Solana. I think that gives us a lot of reason, or gives a lot of people a lot of reason to want to own one. You're already seeing this play out on Twitter right now. Yeah, where people who have never owned an SMB before are now realizing that this is a piece that they need to have in their collection in order to, really be engaged with the Solana ecosystem, which, I mean, is thriving right now. Like the Solana ecosystem, we just saw stats. What was it last week? That like there are more active users on Solana than even on Bitcoin. Like that is so cool. And all of those active users are going to see SMBs as like the icon, right? And that's what's going to give the Gen 2 collection a lot of value going forward. And as long as the Gen 2 collection continues to be something desirable, so too will the Gen 3, right? Which gives you all the same access that the Gen 2s get.
Do you see at all, like, and I don't know if this has ever come up in conversation. I'm sure it has at some point. But do you guys see yourself ever expanding to other blockchains like Ethereum and things like that?
It's something we had considered. There was this like, I mean, there's so many cool ideas that we had behind the scenes when we were like thinking about this. And like, there was this really cool idea that we had where like we were kind of come out with this new like animated collection where like the monkeys would like get into these exosuits and like travel to a new chain. But like ultimately all of us came to this project and made it successful because we had such faith in Solana, right? Like we always knew that like the ease of onboarding, the awesome user experience, like the cheapness of transactions, like this is the promise that blockchain was meant to deliver. And I think that really drives our commitment to staying on Solana, as well as some other things. Like we're pretty deeply integrated with the ecosystem. Metaplex is an example, but like also the Solana organization as a whole. For example, a lot of people don't know this, but the MonkeyDAO actually acts as a custodian for Solana Foundation grants. So if you're looking to build on Solana, you can come to the MonkeyDAO and pitch your proposal, and we can give you money to build the thing, because we run part of the grants program for the Solana Foundation. So we're like really pretty deeply integrated with Solana, not just as a blockchain, but as a company. And we want to continue to foster that relationship because we feel like it's been pretty beneficial to us.
That makes total sense. So where do you see the mint funds, obviously, that you guys are bringing in from Gen 3, obviously a portion of that is going to acquiring the actual IP, but then what else is those mint funds being used for? And I guess like what gets you excited about finally you guys have money coming in for all these people who have been busting their ass and working their ass off and things like that. So I guess what are those mint funds going to be used for? And do you guys have some ideas that you've talked about internally?
Oh yeah. We're loaded with ideas. I can't speak about most of them because like they're still not final, but like I can tell you the breakpoint this year is going to be a fucking blowout. I mean, the plans that I've seen that are being laid for it, we've got this like big flashy splashy name for it. I'm not going to spoil that for you yet, but we're known for that, right? We're known for being one of those communities that just has like a presence in every country in the world, right? Like when I traveled to Hong Kong over the summer, like I had a group of friends there who were taking me out to like dinners and showing me around. Like that kind of experience is important, and we foster that. Like we support monkeys to do that by subsidizing those events. So people get together. If you're a MonkeyDAO, you get together, you can, with a certain number of monkeys, you can take a selfie with all those monkeys and put your monkey pictures on it. Then you'll get reimbursed for a portion of that, which is pretty dope. We want to continue to do that because we think those real life connections add a lot of value to the community, right? They elevate our profile on social media. In real life events have the same effect, right? Like showing those videos afterwards, actually being at those events, like you cannot overstate the value of encouraging people in the community to stand together in real life, shake each other's hands. I like that moment where you realize that you're talking to someone that you have been kicking it with online for like the past 8 months. And then like you hug it out with that person, like that is magical. You can't put a price on that. And MonkeyDAO facilitates those moments better than any other NFT project or Web3 community. And so we'll be able to do that to a whole other level with funding to actually be able to pay the people who are organizing those events. In addition, Monkey Ventures has been tremendously successful. It's never been something that the MonkeyDAO itself actually participates in. Like the MonkeyDAO treasury isn't making those investments. Now we'll be able to because we're not holding on to that money, trying to just pay our basic expenses. But now we'll actually be able to make some investments for the long term with the MonkeyDAO. And by and large, the investments that have come in through Monkey Ventures have been just tremendously successful. And then we've got a bunch of other plans for working with partnerships. You know, I can tell you, like, one thing you said earlier, I thought it was really important. It's like, for a long time, people were just super confused about what the difference between SMB and MonkeyDAO was. People would come to us and they'd say, we want to make a deal with the SMB. And I'd say, I can't help you, because I was running partnerships for a long time. I'd say, I can't help you because we don't own the SMB IP. Like, you have to talk to them. They're not reachable. Now we can say yes, right? Now when, you know, like this literally happened, you know, it was like a name brand Hollywood studio type company came to us and was like, we want to figure out a way to work together. It was before Art Basel in Miami. They came to some of our events and they were like, we love your community. We think that this art is like very marketable. We want to figure out how we can integrate it into some of our IP as well. And we were like, we're so eager to do this. We really want to, but we don't know how it interacts with the SMB IP. Like, we can't at this moment. We fostered those relationships. We've continued those conversations, and that's an avenue for us now that we own the IP, right? So there's like countless different things that we can unlock. So up till now, we've had the presence, but we haven't had the asset to actually act on these things.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so the other question I had for you is, I feel like when I see the majority of MonkeyDAO merch, I see things like what you're rocking right now, which is your own personal monkey on a sweatshirt or something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like I've never seen just straight up like MonkeyDAO merch.
Oh, no, it exists. We have a store. Let me show the store.
Okay, there we go. Show it.
No, if you ask, I don't know the URL off the top of my head, but if you go to the MonkeyDAO and you type in !merch, it'll pull up the link. We've got a whole store where you can just get the MonkeyDAO branded merch. Most people don't know this, but the MonkeyDAO logo, it's like an M and a D, is actually a monkey face.
Okay.
Super, super clever. But here's a little alpha for you. Once we get some mint funds in, we're planning a whole rebrand with new branding. It's going to be super fresh to really like visually signify the unification of SMB, MonkeyDAO, Gen 3, all under one brand.
I'm very excited for the new collection. I'm hoping I can get one. I know you guys are gonna have some raffles, some auctions, and everything like that. So I'm excited to play a part in that and see if I can join. But yeah. So I guess for everybody else, what should they be excited about? If you're currently a Gen 2 holder, or if you're looking to get into the Gen 3 collection, why should you be excited about the future of MonkeyDAO?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of the stuff I just mentioned, right? Like actually owning the IP just unlocks huge value for us, not just in terms of licensing and partnerships, of course, stuff that we've already been working on behind the scenes. Even before any of this had happened, we'd signed a deal with like this fairly major brand in Asia. It's called IPX, but we didn't know what to do with it. We didn't have like any like firm plans because we didn't know what rights to the IP we had. Now that all of that is cleared up, we can start to move forward with things like that. Like I mentioned, Breakpoint this year is going to be total blowout, so that's something to really look forward to. And if you're an SMB Gen 2 holder, you're of course going to have like the premier access to the Gen 3 collection at the lowest possible price. So the prices, people talk about them being pretty high, but actually I think like for the value that you can get for being able to buy into a part of this legacy, it's very reasonable. So people who are Gen 2 holders right now, everybody gets access to one Gen 3 at a price of 10 SOL for every SMB Gen 2 that they hold. And then we're going to do a round of pre-sales at around 14 SOL, obviously subject to change if the price of SOL just like moons in the next couple of days or something. So then the pre-sales will do about 1,000. So, you always want to cater to your whales, and people who want to like amass a lot of SMBs will allow them to do so within limits, of course. And then we also want to make MonkeyDAO accessible to people who, again, can't get a 180 SOL for their monkey. And so we're going to do a round of private raffle or of public raffles. It's kind of similar to what we've seen, on the Tile platform, which I actually think is a lot of fun because you just really never know like where it's going to end up. And so that'll be kind of a fun event as well. Again, all built on Metaplex backend.
I'm very excited for all of this. And so, yeah, then from there, I guess my last question that I would have for you, unless there's anything that we haven't touched on, but I feel like we've for the third time, we crushed this.
Yeah, right. I think
there we go.
Yeah,
this is finally, there we go.
This feels like it.
Yeah, this episode's coming out. So for you, I just want to know personally, what does being in MonkeyDAO mean to you?
Oh God. All right. This is, such a broad question. Like, it has meant so many different things to me over the course of a year. It's like, it's been like the reason that like I'm excited to get up and check my DMs in the morning. It's been like the reason that I'm up until like 4 a.m. still checking those same DMs, like, but in a VC hanging out with like my good buddies in like Hong Kong and Canada. But like the core of it is that it's, what people sometimes refer to as this like digital nation state, right? It is the extension of how we as human beings have organized ourselves around, be it a religion, be it a nationality, be it a sports team. This is just an extension of that, except now we're organized around a collection of pixel monkeys that kind of resonate with us. And the community that formed out of that, I think, is really the future of human interactions going forward, right? I think that it's, every bit as meaningful as all of those other types of human interaction that we're already familiar with, the traditional ways of forming a community. But this one transcends boundaries, right? And, it's easy to say that it transcends geographical boundaries, but it also transcends like countries and jurisdictional boundaries. And we can, as a collective, like have a real effect. We can own an asset together as a group of 1,800 to 1,000, 5,000 members and do something with that, right? That's never before been possible in the course of human history. And MonkeyDAO, I think, is the finest example of that idea.
Well, there we go. That's a great drop the mic kind of moment right there. But, dude, I'm very excited for you guys. I feel like it's finally time to unleash the true potential of MonkeyDAO, because I always felt like there was this limitation on you guys of the IP conversation was so, like, just over. I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but it's just everywhere you looked on Twitter, there was always the conversation of, are you guys going to acquire the IP? It's going to happen. It's not going to happen. Now it's happened. Right. Now it's happened. Yeah. This Gen 3 collection is really going to allow a lot of other really, really smart people to join the MonkeyDAO and really to take that MonkeyDAO to the highest level possible. And so I'm super excited for it. I'm hoping once again that I can get one. But Ricky, drop your Twitter handle. Where can people find you?
Right. So I'm RickiCryptoStix at Twitter. But most of my messaging happens on Discord. So check me out at ricky.sol #0114.
There we go. See, God, I hate Discord. I don't even know my Discord handle. The fact that you know your hashtag on top of that, like, dude, every time somebody's like, "What's your Discord?" I'm like,
Discord's getting rid of those, thank God. So it'll just be ricky.sol.
Finally.
Yeah.
When's that happening?
I have no idea.
Hopefully soon. I hate Discord, but yeah, man, this has been fun. I appreciate you coming by. I appreciate you doing this 3 times now.
No, it's been a blast. But I love hanging out, and I hope we get to find excuses to hang out more outside of recording.
100%. I'm looking forward to. There's always so much that's going on with different projects, and I always love these podcasts because it gives people an idea of how to simplify everything that's been happening and really give them a full scope of the project and how it came to be and how it got to the point where we're at now. And then I look forward to the next time we run a podcast episode talking about the mints and how, Gen 3 has kind of gone down and the excitement around that and, just kind of how the course of MonkeyDAO continues to grow. So it's always exciting to have these conversations and then to be able to look back a year from now and to be able to watch these and kind of see that growth and what it's been like and everything like that. And always just looking forward to having you and then other monkeys come onto the podcast and talk about the project and everything like that, because there's so many brilliant people in MonkeyDAO, and so I'm always excited to have a conversation with you or Nam or anybody else that's a part of the community. So but man, this has been fun. I'm so glad we crushed it. This is the episode that's finally coming out.
This is the take.
And and I appreciate you being willing to once again record 3 times.
No problem. This has been a blast. Thanks so much for having us, Marc.
No problem. And everybody else, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll chat with you guys soon. See you guys.